This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's episode of Doc and Jock on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I am the Doc, fresh back from the Combine today on Thursday. Man, lots to get into regarding the Lions. Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes spoke. The Pistons had a marquee game, marquee win, even though the opponent was in a tough spot in a back-to-back. Lots to get into, so much to enjoy in the world of sports. It's always good to travel safely. Listen, cuz I'm not going to lie, I don't like flying, but I'm really enjoying that 4-hour drive to Indianapolis. It's calm. You get to see the countryside a little bit. It's a quick 4 hours. This morning, got up early, had some breakfast, hit the road, and it was like a mental refresh. So I'm excited to talk to you. How are things going? What are we hitting today, my man?
Yeah, man, that drive through Indiana is generally pretty pristine. It's a pretty easy drive. It's obviously a lot of flat land. I remember driving to South Bend a lot. It was a good time, man. That drive was so nice. The drive home was nice too, man. I remember we used to record our wrestling podcast.
Yes.
And I would be recording with you while I was driving. That's how easy of a drive it is. It's very nice. So I get it, man. We've got a lot to tackle, though. We've got Michigan. If you want to touch on some Pistons, I did want to add them to the rundown, but after the game the other night against OKC, I was like, I don't know what we can really take out of that because they were the walking wounded, or at least they pretended to be the walking wounded, as all of their starters didn't play and like two of their backups didn't play. So I wasn't really sure what we could go with there. So I left that off, but U.S. beats Canada for gold. We got to talk Lions because there's a whole lot to break down there. There's a lot of stuff. You were at the Combine. Where do you want to start? Do you want to start with some Michigan hoops? Do you want to start with the Olympics? Do you want to start with Lions and kind of breaking down some of the stuff you took away from the Combine?
Yeah, real fast, just with the Pistons, it's nice to be right now, as we're talking, the team with the best record. And I think we'll check in next week in regards to where we think they can go. Is it time to put the expectation of a championship? It's going to be interesting because, they did play the Spurs, and you recognize, that didn't go exactly the way it needed to go. So I want to give it another week, and we'll talk about it. But let's celebrate, man. The USA won gold. It was amazing. I was actually watched the first, second period, most of the third, had to go to church on Sunday, and it was cool because the girls were in the back seat, wife in the car, and listening to the radio, and they're like, score! So I heard it right when it happened. It was exciting. It would have been cool to see live, but I'm not one. I know some people are party poopers and they just want to be Debbie Downer all the time. Yeah, it's weird. They go to 3-on-3, but to be honest, I want to kind of write a letter to Mr. Gary Bettman. Dear Mr. Bettman, my time is valuable. Mr. Adam S.'s time is valuable. Would you consider 3-on-3 for the NHL? Because we know that there's so much ice, so much skill, the game would be over. I love it. I don't hate 3-on-3. I would think that more games would be decided. I know it's a little different to see for a lot of people, but everybody knew the rules. It was played out the way it needed to play out, because if they would have went 5-on-5, they probably would have played until now going on. That's how skilled both teams were. So I'm very happy that the United States won. We own hockey, and literally 46 years after 1980, it was exhilarating. It was fun. It was great to see the fellas partying. Listen, leave politics out of it. It's the USA. They represented the country. I was very happy, and it was exciting because the women and the men both won in overtime, both defeated Canada, both highlighted Michigan and the quality of ice hockey and the players that come out of this region. It was just great to see. And I do think that even though the country's divided on a lot of issues, when it comes to sports and collective unity, it is true. And I will always believe that till my dying day, that sports can unite. And when you put the USA letters on your shirt, it makes me happy. I'll always celebrate it. I'll never put a marquee or put a disclaimer on it or anything about it. It was great. USA, baby. America, F yeah. It was awesome to see, brother.
I think the double dip was nice, right? Beating the Canadian women and then beating the Canadian men was something special. You don't get that all the time. And if we're being honest, for the U.S. men to win, it's been what 26 years since they won gold. So it's a big deal for the U.S. men. And look, when you look on paper, the U.S. women matched up very well with the Canadian women, and I would say that the U.S. women are more talented than the Canadian women. So them beating Canada, going to overtime, I think it's fantastic. I think for the U.S. men, though, you can finally see the gap is starting to close between the U.S. men and the Canadian men, and all the time, all the effort put into the U.S. National Developmental Program, which is based right out of Plymouth. I think it's starting to pay dividends. You're starting to see it pay dividends. When you looked on paper, the Canadian men, I was having this conversation on Saturday night with my buddy. We went out one of the last times before I'm going to have little Bobby Bambino. We went out and we were having a conversation because we're both big hockey fans. And I'm like, Canada should wipe the floor with them. And he was like, yeah. He's like, but Biddington, I don't think is that great of a goaltender. I think Hellebuck's a better goaltender. And I was like, no, you're absolutely right. I agree with you there. But when you go through line by line, Canada should wipe the floor with the U.S.
Yeah.
And he made a good point. He was like, it's when you get to those third and fourth lines. He's like, generally your first two lines are gonna kind of offset each other. When you get to those third and fourth lines, that's where you've got to win. And if you look at the third and fourth lines, part of the reason that the U.S. got in this position was a guy like Dylan Larkin. He was not a top two center on this team. He was your third center. That's a guy who I'm very hard on. I don't think he's an elite player. I think he's a good player. I think if you put him on a Stanley Cup winning team, he's probably your second line center. He was your third line center on this team. And that's a guy who's incredibly talented. Those guys have to win games. Those guys helped you win games. Now, yes, it was the star power that helped power them into the finals against Canada, and it helped power them through the finals, beating Canada. But overall, man, I think this is a fantastic thing for the men and the women. Like I said, celebrating the double dip, going into overtime, getting a big win. Do I think it's a little bit wonky that they play 3-on-3? Yeah. But let's not let that take away from something that was absolutely incredible to watch. Let's not let that take away from something that was absolutely awesome. And again, I think it shows that gap is narrowing between Canada and the U.S. when it comes to men's hockey. The developmental program, this was something that they've spent a lot of money in, a lot of resources. There's a lot of guys who have a choice to make. Do I go play college? Do I go play in the OHL? Do I go to the U.S. Developmental program? The U.S. developmental program is paying dividends, and this shows it. I think it was absolutely fantastic. I think it was a lot of fun to watch. I watched it live. I was actually at my Sunday morning bowling league, and I'm watching it standing next to a guy, and I let out the biggest yell. I had to mess somebody up as they were throwing. I swear to God. I was so pumped. A bunch of us just started hugging. I have these guys whipping my ass in bowling, and I'm hugging them. And normally when I'm bowling and I'm losing, I'm not a very happy camper, but for those moments, man, we were all USA and we were all incredibly happy. And I think it was absolutely great. I loved it.
It's great. It's great to see them celebrate. It's great to see everybody, especially Dylan Larkin, the way they honored Johnny Gaudreau and the family. It was really respectful and classy. It was fantastic. And listen, in the end, down goes Canada. Do you believe in miracles? Yes, twice. 1980 and 2026. Gold medalists, USA hockey, baby. All good, man. But, you look at it now and turning our attention to college basketball. Did Michigan, in your eyes, cuz, need this loss to Duke to kind of get them over the hump? I think it was a referendum game. And when you look at it, you say, okay, you have, it was not at Chrysler. It was not in Chapel Hill, not in Duke, not, in Cameron Indoor or wherever they play. It was in a neutral site. So you look at it and you say, all right, Duke stepped up. Their baller, Cam Boozer, did his job. Michigan was okay. They were in it, but their three-point shooting was their death knell. It was wild to see that they didn't bring their best performance, but I do think it's going to help them. I do think that if you get Duke, Michigan again in the final of the NCAA, I think everybody will get their money's worth, and everybody will be quite impressed with the performance. But in the end, I do think Duke might be a little bit better than Michigan. Do you think it could be a silver lining in any kind of way, or what was your reaction to the loss because it was a marquee loss?
Look, I think it was a huge game. I think it was a fantastic game. I watched the game from start to finish. This was part of the reason why me and my buddy went out on Saturday was to watch this game. And I thought it was a good game. I don't think it's a referendum loss. I think what it is it's a bit of a wake-up call for Michigan. Michigan going into this game, what did they have to gain? What did they have to lose? They win this game. They are seated as your number one team going into the tournament for March Madness. There's no doubt about it. It's a huge statement win. It's a monster victory. What do they lose if they do lose? Not a whole lot. Like let's be honest. Michigan is still a top 4 team. They're going to be a 1 seed when they make it to the tournament. So does it suck that they don't maybe get to pick where they want to go? Sure. With all that being said, they might be the number 2. They might be they might be the second number 1 seed. So I don't think they lost a whole lot. I think if anything, there was a little bit of a blueprint on what they need to do and what they need to fix before they get into March. So I think coming out of a loss, you tend to learn more than you do while you're winning games. So I think this allows Dusty May to go back to the drawing board and say, hey, guys, this is what we need to do. We need to clean up the rebounds on the boards. We need to have less empty possessions when we get down there. We need to take our time, set up, get shots, drain shots. If we don't get shots, that's where you've got to clean up on the boards. We need guys not to get in foul trouble. We need guys having the ability to slash to the basket, possibly draw some fouls, and get to the line and execute. And defensively, I thought they played a pretty good defensive game. Duke was just on fire. I think Michigan had an off night shooting, and those things are going to happen when you get into March. I think for Michigan, a little bit of a wake-up call. I don't think this does anything to necessarily change the way I view Michigan. I don't think this does anything to hinder Michigan's chances at winning a national title. I think, if anything, it gives them more fuel for the fire and allows them to go back to the drawing board and say, look, we're not a perfect team. We lost this game. This is a game that we could have and should have won. We didn't do these things right. We need to execute better here. And I think it allows them to go out and do those things. So I would have loved for them to have beat Duke, but I don't think it's a blemish on this team. They have 2 losses this year. One to Wisconsin by I think 1 point, and they lost this game to Duke. I still think, look, they're going to win the Big Ten regular season championship. I think when they get into the Big Ten tournament, they're the team to beat. They are decimating teams by double digits every single time they go out there. I think they win that as well. I think they go into March. I think they're going to be a number 1 seed. I think they'll be the second number 1 seed. I think Duke, obviously, with this win over Michigan, solidifies themselves as the best team in college basketball. I don't think Michigan's far off. So for me, I thought it was a good loss. If you could spin it one way, I think it's a good loss. What I found appalling was the Michigan fan base claiming that the referees were part of the issue here. The goaltending at the very end, yeah, you could maybe question that a little bit, but that's not why you lost. That wasn't the reason. Michigan was the reason Michigan lost. Michigan wasn't good enough on the boards, and Michigan had way too many empty possessions in that game. If you're not going to execute and you're not going to score when you're shooting for 3, you just can't go down and you just can't lob a shot up and then come back the other way. You can't do that. Not against a team like Duke. If you're going to do that, you've got to clash the boards, you got to get the rebounds, and you got to be able to put buckets back. And that's really what cost them in the end. So I think Michigan's still fantastic team. Like I said, I would argue they're a top 4 team headed into March, and they will be a top 4 team when they get into March. And I think that they are probably the second best team in college basketball right now.
Yeah, it's shooting. It's all about against good defenses. You got to be able to space the floor and execute those shots. And I just wonder, too, sometimes in the philosophy of basketball, it's like, well, get the next one up. But if you're like shooting that poorly, I would have thought that Dusty May maybe would have made a little bit of an adjustment to maybe go inside more, look for better shots. But, man, it's not that easy. It's just not that simple to snap your fingers and have it happen. Duke plays defense, and it's going to be great. I hope, obviously, big Spartan supporter, hope they go as far as possible. But, yeah, I would love to see Michigan and Duke one more time in the NCAA tournament, and I think it could go down to the wire. So it's going to be fun to have that opportunity to see what happens down the road. All right, before we get out of here for today's show, a shorter show. It's obviously a time where it's the combine. It's a busy week, a lot of Lions coverage. Adam is potentially bringing in a new baby to the world. It's a great opportunity. Maybe the next Lions tight end, maybe the next Lions head coach. You never know. Maybe the next Spartans savior at college basketball. Oh my goodness! Cause real fast, real quick diversion. It was obviously work. You go, but the NFL world converges, and so I did the opportunity this year, first time ever to do this. Sit in the bar at the hotel where all the NFL world is, cause money dripping everywhere. There was NIL everywhere. Everybody was trying to hustle. It was a hustlers convention. You had all the NIL management teams, you had the agents, you had the general managers. It was wild to sit back and have a cocktail and see just Mike Vrabel walking by, John Lynch. I saw Adam Schefter trying to shill with Ryan Poles. It was crazy. It was crazy. I saw the super agents. I for a brief 22 seconds, I stopped whatever business Drew Rosenhaus was doing to stop him, got him off his phone, and told him, wow, you're the baddest agent in the game. He looked at me like, get the hell out of here, fanboy. But it was great. It was great. But he did smile. He did say thank you, man. It was cool. Everybody was cool there. So it was fun to see. And so now I am fully validated in my Jared Goff stance. I'm sitting down, and I'm telling you, a gargantuan man sat next to me, and he was 6'8", chiseled. And I said, bro, who do you play for? I thought he was going to tell me tell me the Panthers, or like he was a defensive end for something else. Bro was 17. I said, what? I said, you're 17 years old? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, but you're defensive end? I said, are you staying in the Big Ten? He looked at me, winked, and said, we'll see. And he had like this whole management team. I was like, oh my God. This kid probably is going to be a superstar down the road. And I looked at him and I said, if that dude was barreling down on me, I would be screaming, crying, like, oh my God. I'm telling you, there was maybe 3% body fat. He looked like a 30-year-old. So that's the next wave of athletes coming up. Oh my God. It was a good time. Just the right amount of time for me. I don't really like the prospect workouts. I'm going to watch them today at home. I get to finally relax a little bit. Work on the podcast and I'm going to sit and watch the Underwear Olympics, as you and I have famously coined it. And for the Lions, it was straight business. A lot of good things to talk about. I think my biggest takeaway clearly is I do think that David Montgomery went to the team and said, I may not be that happy being here. I want touches. Give me the ball. And if you're going to pay Jahmyr Gibbs that much money, I probably have a chance to get my career going somewhere else. I think that's the main takeaway I took from it. I do think that there is a small chance that they're going to add in free agency, but not a $20 million player. I feel like they're going to add a couple $8 to $10 million dudes and get after it. I thought that Brad Holmes, while it wasn't the best answer, I thought he expertly answered my defensive end question, where he said, look, yeah, I could tell you right now that this is a deep defensive end class, but when we probably do our research and we have our 50-point checklist that every player has to have, that list might go down. So I said, you know what, that makes sense, is that they have their strategy. They kept everything close to the vest. It was very straightforward. He dodged when he needed to. The one thing, though, that wasn't the best was kind of the thoughts on Kirby Joseph, in that you have had him off of basically football real activities for a month since the season ended, and he said you needed another month. I think that's what Dan Campbell said, or Brad Holmes, that Kirby Joseph you need to evaluate further in a month. That's not good. I'm like, I was hoping that there would be a little bit more positivity with it, but that was that, and we got a chance to sit down with Kelvin Shepard and Drew Petzing. So look for content day by day as we sprinkle out what was said throughout those meetings. But by and large, it was professional. I do think the one thing that impressed a lot of people was Dan Campbell finally saying, okay, I got my hands on the defense. I got to look at this thing and actually look at it, which to me, it kind of sucks with how fast the NFL world works, because it hits you square in the face yet again that you are what you are coming out of training camp. Like, practice is not where you can just fix things dramatically. Like, if you're a defense that's just going to struggle, it's going to be really tough to identify all the leaks and fix it all within 1 or 2 weeks of identifying it, because it just goes by so fast. You have to game plan, you have to do so much. And now the Lions are kind of learning that, here's some issues we got to deal with on defense, and here's how we got to fix it. So I'm curious if they will. I do think that overall, my tone regarding the team is that it's going to be a good team, but I don't know if they're going to push the pedal to the metal fast enough to get the window to the point where you could win it all. I think you have a good team. You're going to have a playoff team, but I don't sense that you can fill potential holes at safety, losing a veteran linebacker, getting 2 or 3 defensive ends, getting things done. And then the big news that happened while we were there, which, come on, Taylor, you couldn't wait till the weekend. I think Taylor Decker heard his bosses going, "We need an answer in 2 weeks." He's like, "I'll give you an answer now." What was
your reaction to that?
Yeah.
Because look,
not good.
I was when that news broke, I was so just like, initially, this is what I said. This is what I said out loud. I was like, God damn it. I was hoping he would retire for a couple of reasons. I wanted the cap space. I wanted him to ride off into the sunset. I've been telling you for 2 years now that I don't think he's good enough to play that position. I'm done with Taylor Decker, and I was hoping he was done with the Lions. And when the news broke that he was coming back, I was like, shit. I was like, are we serious here? And I don't know if that was everybody else's reaction or not, but that was mine. Like, that was my actual reaction. I was frustrated that he was coming back. What was yours?
Yeah, it's not frustrating. It's just I do see the value in potentially getting that $11 million cap space added to the team, and I'm not as devastated because I think you could replace him by putting Penei Sewell at left tackle and figuring it out at right and seeing what you need to do. But at the same time, he's a vet, but I just hope that he can play. Like, what if he's going to be in the same spot where he misses a couple games and not there, But in the end,
Dan Campbell already said, like, look,
we have to get his replacement. Yeah,
we're going to have to watch him. Like,
yeah.
I feel like that puts you, as a head coach and as a team, I feel like that puts you in a weird spot.
Yeah.
This is the thing. I'm so happy that the Lions are relevant. I'm so happy that the Lions have a good team. I'm so happy that they have a fantastic head coach. And I'm happy that they've got a general manager who, if you listen to him talk, he believes that he's the second coming of Christ for the position. And look, give Brad Holmes his just due. He does a very good job. Has he had some monster swing and misses? And has he not performed the way he did early on in his tenure with the Lions? Yes. But overall, he's a good general manager. All that being said, does it feel like the Detroit Lions kind of operate as a Mickey Mouse operation? And what I mean by that is, you've got a guy like Taylor Decker, where I feel like if this was Philadelphia, if this was maybe Dallas, if this was insert high-profile team here, they're going to have this conversation with Decker. He's not necessarily going to make the decision. They're going to help him make that decision. And that conversation is going to probably go something like this. Like, look, we want to have you back, but if you're coming back, we're renegotiating this contract and we're restructuring it because 1, we need cap space, and 2, you're kind of a part-time player, so you're not getting all of this money. And 3, if that's not going to work, then we're just going to outright release you and we're going to save the money. It's not one of those things where they need to make those decisions. And you see them do these things when they go out and they start extending guys early. You see these things when they have this conversation about David Montgomery, who's, it sounds like, has went to them and says, look, just trade me. Get me out of here. You're not using me the way I need to be used. And you just extended him. Like, to me, it feels like sometimes they put the cart before the horse and they end up shooting themselves in the foot. And they're so loyal to these guys. And the Kirby Joseph contract is, I think, just a part of a spotlight on things that they do that they don't have to do. You didn't have to extend Kirby Joseph early. You didn't have to at all. Instead, you did. And now this guy has 0 knees, and you're not sure if he's going to be able to play next season. And then you fast forward it to Taylor Decker, and it's like, you gave him all the leverage. You gave him all the power. You're allowing him to dictate what you guys do. I feel like a real team, a team that goes out there and wants to win a Super Bowl and realizes that they're in a Super Bowl window and now needs help because that window is closing quickly, would go to Taylor Decker and say, hey, look, If you're coming back, we're renegotiating this. If that's not good enough, hey, see you later. Instead, they don't do that. Instead, he comes back. He's going to get his full contract. And again, he's probably going to be a part-time player. To me, it's very Mickey Mouse, and they are way, way too loyal to their own guys.
Yeah, I think they are way too loyal. And it's one of those situations where you realize, publicly they did say that we have to avoid that. Like, we have to kind of make sure that if Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell said that we have to kind of.
Dan Campbell, that's what they said.
They were like, we kind of have to be mindful that we don't just fall in love with our own guys too much. But then everybody that you want to pay, they just give a bunch of money to. But here's the problem. The problem is, okay, I understand that you want to be a draft, develop, sign kind of team. And by and large, the one contract that maybe you would say you're going to regret is not Kirby Joseph. He was great. He was a ball hawk. The Aleem McNeil contract is like, man, he's good, but not 20. He overpaid.
Oh, bro.
Massive overpay.
Contract, the JMO contract.
And
Kirby Joseph contract.
I would not I wouldn't. Yeah.
Right there.
And I think you have to be a little stern. You have to, is a north of 30-year-old lineman better than Penei Sewell? I don't think so. So I understand loyalty. I understand that's how you want to do things. You're not going to broom the guy out. But these small decisions, you paying Jahmyr Gibbs down the road might be the difference between you being able to restock when Taylor Decker leaves next year. I know these contracts sometimes don't kick in until 2 or 3 years later, but at the same token, every contract that you give out is going to one day be on the books, and it's going to be really, really tougher because what it means is that you have the cost already in hand. So you only have so much money to try and finagle these contracts to get new players. And so when you have now in the future, just look at this in 2 years, you're going to have Penei Sewell, Amon-Ra, Jack Campbell, Jahmyr Gibbs, JMO, all these Jahmyr Gibbs and Jared Goff, all these contracts, you're going to have 10 guys that are going to potentially get up to $300 million in contract before you even open your books to see if you can sign anybody else. The cap goes up $25 million every year, which is really good. It's basically a free player every year. But what's going to happen, cuz, is you're going to restructure them one by one, and you're going to kick the can down the road. Yep. And so the big nightmare is, and this is the gamble, this is what we would call tenure defining moment. You do this and it doesn't work, you are going to be in a nightmare to try and cut everybody and you'll end up in cap hell.
Do you remember the cap hell that we were in when Bob Quinn was here?
Yeah.
Do you remember that? That was the one thing Bob Quinn did. And the one thing Bob Quinn did well was he cleaned up the books.
Yes.
He was not a good general manager, but he came in
and the books were pretty good.
The books, and he had everything kind of laid out where we've got money now, and we've got money for years now. Brad Holmes has come in, and he's kind of taken that, and yes, he's added a layer of drafting to that, and that's fine. But he is now putting them squarely in the bullseye, where in 5 years from now, you're not going to be able to sign anybody, and you're going to have to release everybody, and you're going to have a cap number that is going to absolutely submerge you and kill you. His books are going to be so messy. They're not messy right now. It's not great right now, but it's not messy. It will be messy in 5 years from now. And that's when you've got to pay the piper, which is why when you start looking at contracts for a guy like Brian Branch, contracts for a guy like Sam Laporta, there's talks about extending Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs is 2 years away from his contract being done. There's no reason to extend him. Same thing with Jack Campbell. There's no reason to even have this conversation about extending these guys.
Right.
And yet, you've got a guy like Brad Holmes entertaining these conversations. What are we doing? Also, Sam Laporta, Brian Branch, come back and earn your contract, guys.
Yeah.
Look, I love Brian Branch. If it came down to Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph, I would have put Kirby Joseph on the first airplane out of town and said, go away. Brian Branch is our guy. Instead, they were like, no. Here, Kirby, here's a whole bunch of money. Oh, you've got old man knees, and it's like you're 86 and they're arthritic. Great. Fantastic. Instead, Brian Branch blows out his Achilles, and you're talking about possibly extending that guy. He has to come back and earn his contract. Sam Laporta's got a bad back. You don't know if he'll ever be the same. There's conversations about possibly extending him. Make him come back and earn it. Do not just give these contracts out. Don't do that. I get that you're trying to avoid the escalation, right? And you're trying to get guys a year ahead of time and get them a little bit on the cheap. I understand it. In theory, it works out fine. But when you're trying to do it with all your guys, to your point, that's when you end up in cap hell. And that's where they're going to be. And that's why they've got to now restructure a guy like Jared Goff. They've got to restructure a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown to find some money so they can go out and possibly add a piece or two in free agency and possibly re-sign some of their own guys, which, like you said, you're kicking that can down the road. And at a certain point, like I said, 5 years from now or so, you're going to have to pay the piper. It's a dangerous, dangerous game. And I feel like the books have now gotten very, very messy for the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, and I just feel like you're being married to being good. And there's no like desperation to be
That's
great.
A fantastic point. Fantastic point.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
You are in love with just being good. You're
Yeah.
just good enough. We'll get to the playoffs. Maybe we'll win a game. And then, you know what? We'll come back next year and we'll have the same conversation all over again. And we'll get to the playoffs and we'll maybe win a game. And then we'll have the whole conversation all over again.
Yeah.
It's like trying to prop that window open with toothpicks. It's like, no, kick the window open and go win a Super Bowl. Let it shut, rebuild it, come back, kick the window open, go win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You're propping it open with toothpicks. It's not good.
It's also driven by what's great about the combine is not only do they do podium stuff, sometimes Brad and Dan will accept interviews from Sirius XM, Rich Eisen, and the national shows. And Brad Holmes tells Rich Eisen when he's asked about the whole Super Bowl window narrative, he's like, we try to avoid windows. Well, okay, I understand the philosophy that you want to be good every year, but there's such a thing as guys get older, guys leave, teams get better, teams evolve, and I know a lot of teams can go worst to first, but there are growing costs. There are windows when you have the same operation and you're running your team, but at a much higher cost. So most people believe, and your fan base believes, you're 3-4 external players away from winning. They don't believe. And maybe you get them in the draft this year with 8 picks. Maybe you get 2 or 3 more that are able to contribute. But in the end, the puzzle has to fit all together. And many people would feel more comfortable if you had $100 million in cap space and you could get a Linderbaum, a Rick Woolen, and maybe a Kenneth Walker and add some talent. You just think about it from that perspective. If you just were, and we're not saying they're going to do it or they'd ever even entertain it, but just 2 common dudes just sitting here. You say, okay, you're going to get rid of Graham Glasgow. You're going to get rid of Taylor Decker. You're going to get rid of David Montgomery. That's $20 million in cap space. Now you're able to get that $20 million. Goff adds 30, 40. That's $60 million in cap space. You're 10 in the hole. Now you got $50 million. And let's say you say, all right, boom, try to get one, Kenneth Walker, or a Rick Woolen, or a Linderbaum, or you go and you say, okay, I'm going to give some of that to Hendrickson and somebody else. You don't tell me that just makes the team a little bit better than what you have right now. And I know Dan Campbell, when he was asked about splashes, he's like, what, name recognition? I get it, but we're just saying add talent that's going to cost you, but typically the costs of players that are good is typically higher. There is a marriage there. And so, yes, name players tend to be, because we know them universally, tend to be good players. And I just think the problem is, and it's not a knock, but I don't know if Dan Campbell really likes super duper stars. Like, think about it, like from the perspective of where he's at. He's a grinder. I'm a meat packing kind of guy. Go to work every day, lunch pail. Do you think he wants a guy that wears a boa, around his waist and is like all about himself and all crazy? You know what I mean? Could you imagine if that was that? Dan Campbell would look at him and be like, no, we're not doing that. And so I love it. I love the idea that you need gritty guys. But sometimes you do need the feather boa wearing kind of dudes that are just flamboyant and are dogs and might end up street racing or do something, but end up sacking the quarterback 20 times in a year. You know what I mean? So you don't need a whole locker room full of it. But I don't understand that. Listen, and Detroit has this. There's a little bit of a fear of the superstar diva. Guys, it's okay. Try it. Let's just see. We haven't had it. I know all 4 want to have these young guys all come in and grow and have this grit and develop. But there is something to be said that Cade, Cunningham is the number 1 pick in the draft. So he's not a gritty guy. He's a superstar. You know what I mean? Matthew Stafford, number 1 pick in the draft. So at the same time, I feel like Detroit is not only in love with their own, they're in love with grit, hardworking. But there are guys, and I hate to say this in this way, there are guys that maybe will work a little bit less hard, but have way more talent than what you have. So Adam and I have been screaming this for 15 years. The NFL is a talent business. You have to have grit just to get out on the field. Like, you're going to get your ass beat and you're probably going to take 15 years off your life. To be able to get yourself mentally to get to that spot, you just got to find talent. And I don't know if Detroit, the Pistons, Wings, Tigers, and now they're starting to, with what the Tigers did in their spending. But I think universally there is this notion. Remember, too, guys, the Seahawks bought some guys. They brought Shaheed in. They brought in a Leonard Williams in free agency. They added some talent that was able to help round out a team. So I do think that in the end, if this goes this way, and we shall see, if it goes this way, it's because there's been a fear of the super duper star. And I hope that's not the case, but we'll see in future episodes how this shakes out. Free agency is right around the corner. We'll try to go shopping. We'll see if any of the guys that Adam and I want that we talk about next week make our list. Make sure you follow Adam on X at AdamRSGROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. A great opportunity today to talk about the Lions and recap everything. Make sure to hit us up at Detroit Podcast is where you can go to get up-to-the-minute information, thoughts, ideas, wild takes, and some hijinks and hilarity. Thanks, everybody, for listening in this week. We appreciate your patience. And next week, we'll be back at it on the next episode of Doc and Jock, which is featured on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.